Hi, I'm Heyzeus, and we have a new case. Valve has released the clutch case. There's a whole bunch of new skins, a whole bunch of new glove finishes. Looks pretty interesting, so let's get into it. I think this case does have a fair bit going for it. All up, there's 17 new skins, 7 mil-spec, 5 restricted, 3 classified, and 2 covert, so pretty standard. There's definitely some skins in here that'll be fairly popular though, particularly the M4A4 Neo Noir and the Swag 7. Also, the USPS Cortex and the Orc Mortis should do well because classified skins that are on desirable weapons always tend to. Personally, my favourite skin in the case is the Orc Mortis. I imagine probably most people don't feel that way, but I'm a bit of a sucker for dark colours and death imagery, so that's my sort of thing. Interestingly, this case is a bit reminiscent of the Spectrum case, in the sense that it's got a Neo Noir and a Bloodsport as its covert skins. That's a pretty interesting choice by Valve. It makes me wonder whether they analysed the Spectrum case and found that the Bloodsport and the Neo Noir were very popular there and they wanted to repeat that success. Of course, on the other hand, someone at Valve might just like those skins, so who knows. Finally, it's also got a whole bunch of new glove finishes which can only be found in this case, which will probably give people quite an impetus to open these for a while. That's why I think it'll be fairly popular. Because they've only just been released, it's a bit hard to know which gloves are going to end up being worth the most, so I'm not actually going to speculate on that. Although I think a good pair of case-hardened gloves will go for quite a bit. My favourite is definitely the duct tape. Like, everyone wants some duct tape on their gloves. It's just what I think of when I think of a snazzy pair of gloves. So the main thing I wanted to look at with this case is where the value with the skins is going to end up, which particular skins are going to be the more desirable and the pricier and which ones aren't. The reason this is important is that it actually allows us to see what trade-ups with this case will look like when the price stabilises. There's almost always profit to be made at every tier of every new case that comes out, so I'm going to go through this case sequentially and try and get a sense of what trade-ups will be viable within it in a month or so. I'll start with the mil-spec skins. I think the Oxide Blaze, Night Riot and Black Sand will be the main skins used to trade up for restricted skins. Maybe the Flame Test too, but we'll see. Either way, those first 3 skins should be the cheapest mil-specs in the collection, and the best ones to trade up with as a result. It's basically just because they're on guns that aren't used very much, nothing special, it's just the way the prices go. With the restricted skins, I suspect the valuable skins in this tier of the collection will be the Moonrise, the Swag 7 and the Arctic Wolf. I think at first the Swag 7 will dominate. In the short term there should be a lot more demand for it than any other restricted skin, and it also has the largest float range of any skin in this tier of the collection, which inflates its price at the minimal wear and factory new levels, since there'll be less of them unboxed and they'll be harder to get out of trade-ups. In the long term, I think this may balance out a bit. The Swag 7 might ultimately drop in price a bit, and the Glock may become the most expensive skins. The lost skins in this trade-up will probably be the Negev and the Nova, which means they should be the trade-up inputs for classified skins, particularly the Negev Lionfish, which will come out at quite a low float with its narrow float range. Interestingly, all these skins have a float range of less than 1, so to be guaranteed to get a factory new skin from a trade-up, you'll need an average float of less than 0.076, and to be guaranteed a chance of getting a minimal wear, you'll need a float of less than 0.163. Now, this probably won't affect how profitable the trade-ups are, but it will reduce the amount of effort involved in finding the right skins for them. With the classified skins, we essentially have 2 weapons that will hold a lot of value, and 1 that won't. Firstly, there's the Orb Mortis, which might not be the most colourful orb ever, but it's still an orb, and there's no such thing as a cheap classified orb. Well, there might be depending on your opinion of cheap, but relative to other classified skins, orbs are always some of the most expensive. The other skin that's going to be quite valuable is the USPS Cortex, which is a decent looking skin in my opinion, but at the end of the day, its value is going to come from the fact that it's on a widely used weapon rather than its actual aesthetics. In terms of the price of the Cortex and the Mortis relative to one another, and I hate how similar those 2 names sound, I hope it doesn't get confusing. Generally speaking, orbs will be worth more than USPSs, but I think in this case, a factory new Cortex will be worth about the same as a factory new Mortis, but a minimal wear Mortis will be worth more than a minimal wear Cortex. The reason for this is their float ranges. The Cortex has a full float range of 1, and the Mortis has a float range of 0.64. So, aside from the fact that this means it'll be much rarer to unbox a factory new Cortex, there'll be tons of people doing trade-up contracts where they can get a factory new Mortis but only a minimal wear Cortex, because you need an average float of less than 0.07 for a factory new Cortex, but only 0.109 for the Mortis. So it's much easier just to try and get the Mortis in factory new and not worry about the Cortex. As a result, there'll be a whole bunch of extra minimal wear Cortexes pumped out in the process, reducing its price. And you can see a good example of this with the AWP Onitaji and the 5.7 Hyper Beast. The Onitaji has a float range of 0.5 and the 5.7 has a float range of 1. And as you can see, the factory new prices are comparable, but the price of the Hyper Beast goes over a cliff when you get to minimal wear. Now the AUG, on the other hand, is going to have what I call the Fleet Flock experience. Basically, it's going to be the unpopular, unloved and cheap skin in this collection, good only for trade-ups. Thanks to its float range of 0.63 though, it might be quite good for that. There should be lots of these in quite low floats around. Also, I'll add at this point that I reckon there's going to be about 5 different ways to do profitable trade-ups for the classified skins in this collection. Once their prices start to settle down, I'll do a video laying that out, but there should be lots of options. Finally, we're up to covert skins. One is an M4A4, the other is a MP7, and obviously the M4A4 is going to be worth a hell of a lot more than the MP7. As a point of comparison, you might want to look at something like the M4A1S Chenkiko's Fire and the Bison Judgment of Anubis from the Chroma 3 collection. That's the sort of price disparity we're going to be looking at in the long run. As far as trading up for these skins goes, and there's going to be tons of people using that classified AUG to do it. Firstly, the M4A4 has the largest float range at 0.9, so you'll need a float of 0.07 or less to get factory new, and 0.166 to get minimal wear. The MP7 is a much narrower float range of 0.65. To get a factory new MP7, you'll only need a float range of 0.107. For the most part, I think the most profitable float margins to trade up around will be the thresholds for the factory new M4A4. The MP7 will be a loss either way. Because the threshold for the factory new MP7 is much higher though, I suspect we'll actually see a lot of people doing trade ups where it's possible to get a minimal wear M4A4 and a factory new MP7, and it'll be interesting to see whether that's actually the most profitable way of going about things. Personally, I think it won't, but it'll still be interesting to see. Also, I will emphasize, the MP7 is always going to be a massive loss no matter what. This is always going to be a high risk, high reward trade up. So that's sort of trade ups dealt with. Also, if anyone's wondering, is there anything in this case worth investing in? No. In terms of investments though, it is actually relevant to a different investment, and this is the Hydra Case. And by extension, all of the skins in it, but since the price of those skins is ultimately going to be tied to the price of the case itself, we can just focus on the case. A lot of people have been talking about the impact this case will have on the Hydra Case, and it's a bit hard to tell exactly what the general community feeling on this is, and I'm going to be careful not to strawman here, but basically, because people are expecting lots of new gloves in this case, which it has, there was an expectation that it would crash the price of the Hydra Case, and the Hydra Case has the original set of gloves in it as its extremely rare special items. Now, I get the impression that some people only think this will be a temporary crash, and some think it'll be permanent. As far as a temporary crash goes, the new case has absolutely dropped the price of the Hydra Case. Whether you could call it a crash is another matter. It went down from about $2.20 to about $1.90 as I was recording this, but we will need to wait a few days to see the full effect. In terms of the long-term effects though, this new case will undoubtedly slow the rate that the Hydra Case is growing in price, but it won't stop it. So to start by explaining what I mean by slowing the growth of the Hydra Case, there's an investor on the CSGO market subreddit who did some investigating, and he found that a lot of people that were buying Hydra Cases were actually opening them. You could see who was buying them, you could check their inventory, you'd go there after they buy the case and you'd see there's no case, but there's a brand new Hydra Case skin, which shows you that they've opened it. Because this was actively consuming Hydra Cases, naturally it was forcing up the price. Now, with this new case, the rate at which Hydra Cases are being opened is undoubtedly going to slow, and that will in turn decrease the rate that their price is increasing. I'm extremely confident though that the price decrease we're seeing at the moment will only be temporary. In the long run, the Hydra Case will keep on going up. Why do I think this? Well, Compare the Hydra case to something like the Winter Offensive case or the Huntsman case. These are cases that did well initially after they were removed, but have since stagnated at about $1 each. The number of Hydra cases ever sold on the market is only a tiny fraction of these. There's been 26 million Huntsman cases sold, 12 million Winter Offensive cases sold, but only 4.5 million Hydra cases sold. And on the whole, the stuff inside the Hydra case is much more valuable, much more interesting, and there's far less of it on the market. Compare the quantities of Hydra case skins to Huntsman case skins, for instance. There's a lot less Hydra case skins out there. And in the long run, this is going to keep the prices high, and it's going to keep people opening the Hydra cases. So my advice is, don't panic, don't sell your Hydra cases just yet, hold on to them. It may be a little while before we see a price spike for them again, but it will happen eventually. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, trust the numbers, not your gut. I'm Heyzeus, thanks for watching, see ya.